Reacher is back this week with episode 5 of season 2, and personally, I think it was one where the show took a bit of a dip, I'm not gonna lie, but I think that could just be because it's the middle of the season. This episode had a bit of a shorter runtime compared to usual. There wasn't as much work on the characters individually, but on the positive side, it did develop the story on by revealing some important information. So I feel this episode had that necessary breath that you often get in a show before it embarks onto the final stretch where it's full of action and contains everything that we love about it. If I remember correctly, that was also the case in the previous season of the show too. Anyway, let's jump into the episode and recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from it. Here is Reacher Season 2 Episode 5 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Is Swan still alive? Within this episode of the show, we saw that it seemed like Swan was an individual that was very much alive and well and was on the side of New Age technology, despite us thinking that it could have initially been some kind of covert operation that he was involved in. During the episode, we found out that he was the person who signed off on the transportation of the delivery of the 650 missiles from the Denver New Age Technology warehouse, and he was also the person that put out the hit on Reacher and the rest of the 110th whilst they were at Franz's funeral. Despite being under the impression that it was most probably Mr. Langston, as he'd been behind all of the other attempts. With the episode concluding with one of the hitmen going to meet Swan and the building exploding whilst he went inside of it, I think that could mean a couple of different things. The first is that Swan has actually switched sides like many of the other people that work for New Age technology that used to be on the police force, and he may have seen it as an opportunity to make a quick buck. Knowing the 110th, he may have anticipated that Reacher and the rest of the unit would most likely capture the hitman, and then once he revealed the location of the meeting point, they would have all gone into the building and been killed that way. However, we saw that that obviously didn't happen. Or I feel it could be on the other side, and Swan isn't actually going to be in on it like we think he is, and he could actually now be dead and was being forced to do things against his will with the promise of being released. Let's remember, Swan's house was a complete mess in episode 1 of the show. Whilst that could have been done as part of the plan to get Reacher and the gang to think that he was also taken, with the intention of luring them off of his scent, he would have definitely known that they would have eventually figured out that he would have been working at New Age, so he would have only been delaying the inevitable. Instead, I think that Swan was maybe working undercover at New Age as he got a whiff of what was going on with the missiles, and eventually Langston could have cottoned onto the fact that there was something that was going on with him. So now, with Reacher and the 110th closing in on everything that's happening, he could be getting forced to go along with it with the promise of not ending up like Franz, Orozco, and Sanchez. But in turn, it's also getting inside of Reacher's head and making him question if he could be behind it, something that Langston may want. We know Swan did have some involvement because Langston said to AM, Mr. Swan's associates will be taken care of, and that plan is in motion. This is something which goes against the fact that it was Swan who placed the hit. Maybe Langston was posing as Swan on the phone. So I'm kind of leaning towards the side of Tony Swan being dead just like the rest of the members of the 110th. Or him being in a position where he's being held hostage and he has to go along with it. I don't think he's crooked or he changed sides. When looking at how all of the members of the 110th are, they were like a family, and I don't think any of them would switch to the other side of the law, let alone put a hit out on the people that they once cared so much about. Swan took a bullet for Reacher and was prepared to lay down his own life for him, something that we saw in the flashback, so I don't think he'd changed that much. I guess we'll find out in the next episode. Maybe Swan's body was inside of the burning building and that's where he's going to be discovered. Reacher's Deja Vu. Following what Reacher did in the previous episode to Mr. Boyd in extracting the information from him over Project Little Wing, and Senator LeBoy's involvement in it, we saw that the senator did some research on Reacher and found out about everything that happened in Margrave and his involvement in bringing down the corruption that was present. This was something that the senator wanted Reacher to do for him, but this time on a national scale with the retrieval of the missiles that were stolen from the truck that was hijacked in the first part of the episode. Instead of murders taking place in a town and Reacher uncovering the truth, it's now gone to the scale where there are thousands of missiles that are on the loose and in the hands of dangerous people that could cause thousands of deaths with their missiles. It seems like AM's plan is to get the missiles, get the chips that Langston has at his facility, and then piece the two together, sell them off to the highest bidder, which would most likely be somebody who wants to cause acts of terror and cause mass devastation with them. As we found out in last week's episode, the technology that was initially created as a defense was converted into an offense, meaning that the missiles would always have a permanent hit target. So Reacher has been officially tasked with it now, and is not only acting in order to seek revenge for the killing of his closest friends, but also now looking to protect the nation. What more did we learn about AM? Well, we learned that his alias, Azari Mahmoud, flagged up on the database and that the authorities considered him a ghost because of the fact that he'd never been caught for any of the crimes that he was associated with. He was connected with 3 crimes in the past, but managed to evade capture. The authorities don't know what he looks like and believe that he can pass as many different nationalities. We also found out that the only motive that AM has is money. He doesn't have any political or religious ideologies. He only carries out his tasks for the highest bidder because he wants to keep his pockets lined. We're yet to see him encounter any of the main characters in the show because he's been working on his own in trying to get to New York. But with the missiles in his possession and Langston being ready to load them with the chips that New Age produces, I feel we're most likely going to be seeing him getting into hot water as Reacher will be closing in on New Age, and AM will most likely be there when it all goes down. I feel we're going to have a finale like what we had in Season 1. Overall review. As I said at the start, I thought this episode was quite slow in comparison to the episodes that came before it. But I think it's sometimes necessary for seasons to have that 1 or 2 episodes where it does just slow things down a little bit, regather its bearings and know where to progress onwards to. And that's something that I feel this episode did. Am I preferring this season to Season 1? I don't think I am, but I do like it in its own right still. The stakes are a lot higher than what they were in the first season, which is good. But the fact that it's all over the place in terms of geographical location, it means that the side characters that were often so good in the first season in Margrave are essentially non-existent in this season. So that's a bit of a shame. The only major side character that we're really seeing is Russo the cop, but even still, he hasn't had that much screen time. We're only really starting to learn a bit more about him now, so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. With only 3 episodes to go before the season concludes, I'm intrigued to see where the final stretch is going to take us. So bring on the next episode. Personally, I wish this show brought out trailers, because I feel that would definitely be good for having a rough idea of where it was going to be taking us next week. So, there you have it, Reacher Season 2 Episode 5 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, Theories and Predictions, and Character Breakdowns, then click on the card in the top corner. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. I've been covering the entirety of Season 2 of Reacher as well, so you'll also find them there too. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.